In Fallout 4, you can create a devastatingly powerful and broken gamma gun build by combining a legendary gamma gun and the modification from a unique gamma gun called Lorenzo's Artifact, and in this guide I am going to show you how. Hi, I'm Mo and I'm trapped in Fallout. In order to build the gamma gun build, we will start our journey by first getting our hands on Lorenzo's Artifact, and to do that we will need to start our journey at Bunker Hill. Bunker Hill is far northeast of Diamond City across the river and directly west of the USS Constitution. When you first arrive in Bunker Hill, you want to search for this NPC over here called Edward. Now, if you don't see him, then you can use this bed over here and just sleep in this bed at 1-day intervals until you find Edward. So once you do find Edward, speak to Edward and he will ask you to join him in another location called Cabot House. Select the Sign Me Up option and from here you will eventually make your way to Cabot House. Cabot House is actually directly south of Bunker Hill. It's right over here. Once you arrive in Cabot House, you will speak to this NPC here called Jack Cabot, and he will send you on a number of quests, and eventually you will start a new quest with him where he will ask you to join him and visit an old asylum. So once you speak to Jack Cabot, again this won't be the first quest he gives you, it will be I think the third quest. This quest itself is called The Secret of Cabot House. Accept the quest and follow him to this particular asylum, and from there we will take the next step in our journey. Again, as said, before he gives you this quest, he will give you some other quests you'll need to run, and once you've done those, then you will unlock this particular quest with him. Eventually, if you follow Jack, he will lead you to Parsons State Insane Asylum, and once you get here, he will simply ask you to follow him inside. From this point, it is a very linear quest for the most part, but you will need to follow him up until the point where you reach a very basement-like area, and what I'll do is I'll just skip to that portion of the video right now. Once you make it to the very bottom, he will ask you to effectively side with him or to side with this NPC over here called Lorenzo, and it is his particular artifact that we are after. If you want to get Lorenzo's artifact, you will have to side with Jack Cabot. There's no other way around it. So once he asks you, side with him and he should then instruct you what to do next to get this artifact. So for the moment, I am just going to go ahead and off screen take out Lorenzo, and once I've done that, I will come back and speak to Jack, and then he will instruct me further, allowing us to get one step closer to getting the Lorenzo's artifact. So once you've dealt with Lorenzo, return to Jack and have a quick chat with him, and he will simply ask you to come back to him in about an in-game 1 week time, at which point he will reward you with Lorenzo's artifact. So once you've finished dealing with Lorenzo, again as said, just speak to Jack and he will ask you to come back in about a week. At this point, what you can do is just play the game normally, or if you want, you can go back to that same bed that I showed you in Bunker Hill and just sleep there for 7 days straight, and that should then activate the quest where the game will instruct you to come back and speak to Jack Cabot. So again, we're just going to skip to that part right now. So I have done just that. I've actually returned to Bunker Hill and I've just slept in the bed for 7 days straight, at which point the game told me that I need to return to Jack Cabot, and now if I speak to Jack again, he should reward me with Lorenzo's artifact. And with that, you have now collected the first portion of this weapon. Now that we have Lorenzo's artifact gun, we now need to get our hands on a legendary gamma gun, specifically a gamma gun that has the never-ending legendary effect on it. Now sadly, there isn't a fixed position in the game where this weapon actually spawns. You do need to get a little bit lucky to do this. However, we can do this using the legendary farming method, which I'll talk a little bit more about towards the end of this video. But for the moment, this is something that you will need in order to build this broken gamma gun. So once you have both weapons, you will need to visit a weapons workbench, and you will also need to have a level 4 in science to actually carry out the rest of this build. What you will need to do is go into the weapons workbench, select Lorenzo's artifact gun and select Lorenzo's artifact again, and equip any other modification. It really doesn't matter. So I'm going to select the standard dish. Now, as a result of doing that, what I've effectively done is removed Lorenzo's Artifact, which is basically a mod that's been attached to this gamma gun. What I'm going to do is take that mod and now apply it to this never-ending gamma gun instead. So I'm going to select the standard dish, and from here I'm going to now apply Lorenzo's Artifact to this gun. Now, if you don't know what the artifact itself does, it does do some damage, but more importantly, it actually pushes the enemy back. It sort of fires this impact towards whatever you're firing at, and it pushes an enemy back. And if you do it enough times, it actually causes the enemy to fly back. However, when you attach this to a particular gun, especially if it happens to have an unlimited ammo capacity, it has some interesting results, which I'll show you in a moment. Once you've done that, you want to select the no muzzle, and from here you want to attach the signal repeater. This will effectively turn this gun into something that resembles more of an automatic weapon, i.e. you'll be able to fire a number of more gamma rounds more quickly. And once you've done that, your weapon is now ready to go. Now, when it comes to armor, I'm keeping it very light and allowing you to effectively plug in whatever you want. But for this particular build, I am selecting the hazmat suit simply because it sort of fits in really well. The gun itself can actually cause self-damage. You can take damage yourself from it if you happen to fire it in close proximity, and for that reason I am going to use the hazmat suit. Additionally, let's also look at the perks. You want 2 ranks in the nuclear physicist, and what this will do is increase the amount of damage the weapon does, given that it is a radiation based damage. You also want all ranks in the demolition expert perk, simply because the gun also does explosive based damage. Now, the other optional perk you might want to get is the gunslinger perk, which can cause the weapon to do more damage, given that if you don't have the signal repeater, then you can instead use it as a normal pistol, which in this case will just simply increase the damage that the gun does. And another perk that you might want to consider is the concentrated fire perk. If you happen to use this, say, in indoor environments where the enemy is far enough but happens to be, say, hidden behind a wall or something, then using this gun in VATS will still lead to a significant amount of damage done to the enemy. And now, with all of that said, let's have a look at the gun. But before we do that, if you made it this far into the video, then please do consider liking this video. I really do honestly enjoy reading and replying to as many comments as I can, so please do let me know if you found this build useful. So with this done, let's have a look at what the weapon actually can do. So notice I've got a death claw right here, and what I'm going to do is fire a single shot at it. Now what I'm going to do is try and push it back. So notice with one shot it took a significant amount of damage, and it is also, believe it or not, crippled as well. But the beauty of the weapon is that it constantly pushes enemies back. So if I carry on firing at it, had it had enough health and perhaps survived my onslaught over there, then I would have been able to push this enemy back indefinitely up until the point where they basically get flown all the way off the map. So I'm going to try and find some more enemies and try and show you this. So just over the horizon, I think I found another deathclaw over there, and again, just to make it a bit easier, this time I'm going to go into first person just to sort of show you how devastating the weapon can be. So this time I'm going to hold the button down, the trigger button, and just look what happens. With that, they virtually have no chance of taking you out. This is honestly a very, very powerful weapon. If you actually look at its stats, you will see that it doesn't particularly have a high amount of damage. It does a ballistic damage of 50 with a radiation damage of 24. However, given we've combined Lorenzo's Artifact, which does this impact based damage, and the fact that we've put the signal repeater on it, it basically causes enemies to be thrown back, very similar to, say, what something like the kneecapper would do, which causes enemies to be stored in a single place, and they virtually have no chance of doing any damage to you as long as you can keep them at a distance. So here, for example, I've just managed to take that out with little to no trouble. Now, it also works relatively well as a long-range weapon as well. So if you notice, there's a Radar Scorpion right over there. I'll fire from here, and notice that it got taken out with, again, very little effort. So this is a very powerful weapon in the sense that with the right perks and with this particular setup, you can take out any enemy from a distance, and it will rather be quite easy to use this. Now you might be thinking, hold on, this works really well on deathclaws, or okay fine, it works well on deathclaws, but this is a gamma gun. End of the day, it won't work well on enemies that take little radiation damage, such as super mutants or feral ghouls. Well, let's test that theory now. Let's try and test this on some super mutants. So I've made it to this location where I know there's typically some super mutants, and what I will try to do is, oh, there's one right there. And as you can see, that super mutant again didn't have much of a chance against this particular weapon. So super mutants tend not to take much radiation damage, including others such as feral ghouls, but the reality is against this weapon they really have very little chance. So let me see if I can find some more super mutants in here, and the hope is that I should be able to take them out relatively easily. So I think there should be some super mutants right over here. If I have a look, again, no chance. There were 2 here and I took them out relatively quite easily. So the fact that you have some enemies in the game that take a little damage from radiation weapons does not restrict the amount of damage this weapon actually does, given due to the combination of the Lorenzo's Artifact mod and combining this with the signal repeater. This is honestly a very powerful weapon, and if you combine this with the right sort of perks, you can do a significant amount of damage quite quickly. Again, as said, the reason I wear the hazmat suit myself is because this can actually cause you damage. So for example, if I were to say hit this wall, then I can take damage myself. But wearing the suit does at least reduce the radiation damage that this causes. So you can very easily take yourself out. However, when using this at long range distances, you can equally take out some pretty devastatingly strong monsters also. And as a last test, let's test this out on a behemoth and some feral ghouls that happen to be in the same area. So notice I managed to take that out with very little challenge, and there should be some feral ghouls around here. One will be enough. Again, there's one, and again that one flying all the way to somewhere. So this weapon will have virtually no problem trying to take out any enemy, whether they're immune to radiation damage or not, whether they're big or tiny. In this guide, I showed you how to make a broken gamma gun build that will push enemies back and prevent them from getting close enough to deal any level of damage to you. However, I also touched on legendary weapon farming, which is something you will need to get your hands on the never-ending effect for a gamma gun, which I do cover in the video you see on the screen right now. Click on the video you see on the screen right now and I will show you how you can farm for any legendary armor or legendary weapon in Fallout 4, including the gamma gun.